All right, so today we're going to dive into something pretty incredible, the Kumbh Mela. Now, this is, especially for all you UPSC aspirants out there, this is like gold. This could be an essay topic for your mains exam, and there's all sorts of facts and figures that could pop up in your prelims, so this is a good one to pay attention to.
Absolutely. I think that understanding the Kumbh Mela is really about understanding the cultural and historical significance of the event, and it's quite a deep well of information.
Oh, yeah. So to kind of kick things off, imagine this. You've got these gods and demons battling it out. They're churning this cosmic ocean for this elixir of immortality. It's called Amrita. And this whole scene is called the Samudra Manthan. Now, that's the mythical origin story of the Kumbh Mela.
And what's really interesting about the myth is that it's directly tied to the actual locations of the Kumbh Mela. So as the story goes, a few drops of this Amrita spilled during the struggle and landed in four places: Haridwar, Prayagraj, Ujjain, and Nashik Trimbakeshwar. And those are the four spots where this incredible festival takes place. And each one of them is by a sacred river.
That's pretty cool. Like how the myth and reality are connected like that.
Yeah.
But if the story doesn't explicitly mention the Kumbh Mela itself, how do we know it's connected? What else points to the origins of the Kumbh Mela?
Well, it's kind of a historical puzzle. Um, you see, while this Samudra Manthan myth is very ancient and it's found in texts like the Skanda Purana, none of them actually describe the festival exactly as we know it today.
So some sources say that even the Rig Veda hints at some of the benefits that are talked about in relation to the Kumbh Mela. But others argue it's a much more recent phenomenon. So how do we reconcile those different views?
Well, that's where the historical analysis gets really interesting. We have to look at different sources. So, for example, we have a 7th century account of the Chinese pilgrim Xuanzang, who described a massive gathering at Prayagraj. But it's not entirely clear if he was talking about the Kumbh Mela or something else.
Ah, so there's room for interpretation, which just makes it more intriguing, I think. And then there's this theory by Kama McLean, who suggested that after the 1857 revolt, the Ma Mela, which was an older bathing festival, was rebranded as the Kumbh Mela. So why would they do that?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture of British-Indian relations at the time, it kind of makes sense. This rebranding could have been a clever way to avoid British interference and allow the festival to continue under a new name.
Oh, that's pretty sneaky, but brilliant. Okay, so we've got the mythology, we've got some murky historical accounts. What about some key figures who might have shaped the Kumbh Mela as we know it?
Well, we can't really talk about the Kumbh Mela without mentioning Adi Shankaracharya. Now, he was this incredibly influential philosopher from the 8th century, and he's often credited with formalizing the four Kumbh Mela sites and solidifying their place in the Hindu calendar.
So he's like the architect of the Kumbh Mela as we know it today. That's pretty important. But how did it evolve from these more formalized gatherings into the massive elaborate event that we see today?
Right. Well, this is where movements like the Bhakti movement come in. The Bhakti movement really emphasized personal devotion and worship. And it gained a lot of traction after the 12th century. And its focus on accessibility to the divine could have created this fertile ground for the Kumbh Mela to flourish.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like fairs and gatherings on the riverbanks have always been part of Hindu tradition, and the Bhakti movement may have just like amplified that. And I'm guessing the Ganges being so central to Hindu belief probably played a role too.
Absolutely. The sanctity of the Ganges, along with the travels of sadhus, those wandering holy men, could have spread the Kumbh Mela tradition to the other sacred rivers and solidified the four locations that we know today.
It's amazing how we can trace those threads of influence through history.
Yeah.
But we're just getting started. We've got ancient scriptures, we've got historical theories, we've got influential figures, all shaping this Kumbh Mela narrative. Where do we go from here?
Well, hold on tight, because we're about to dive into some historical records that shed even more light on the Kumbh Mela's evolution. And you won't believe what they reveal about its connection to India's independence movement.
Oh, this is where it gets really good.
Yeah.
I can already tell this deep dive is going to be one for the books, especially for you UPSC folks. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and like this episode if you're enjoying it so far. We'll be back with part 2 before you know it. Okay, deep divers, welcome back. And last time we left off with kind of a cliffhanger, historical records, the Kumbh Mela, India's independence movement. What is the connection?
Well, it's really fascinating how the Kumbh Mela, which is this deeply religious event, became so intertwined with this political struggle for freedom. And to understand this, we need to go back to the aftermath of the 1857 revolt.
Ah, yes. The Sepoy Mutiny, it might have been suppressed, but it sent a clear message to the British that India's desire for freedom was strong and growing.
Exactly. And after the revolt, Allahabad, which is one of the Kumbh Mela cities, gained this new level of importance. The British actually made it a key administrative center, and they shifted the capital of the northwestern provinces there.
So Allahabad was like the place to be. They established the High Court there in
Oh,
1867 and then Allahabad University in 1887. So it must have attracted all these influential people, intellectuals, maybe even some nationalists with some revolutionary ideas brewing.
precisely. And as Allahabad's political and cultural influence grew, so did the potential of the Kumbh Mela to be this platform for nationalist activities.
Oh, it's like the stage was set.
Yeah.
You've got this massive gathering of people, this shared sense of faith, and a growing desire for independence.
Now, this is where British policy perhaps unintentionally played a role. They generally avoided interfering with religious practices in India.
I can see why religion was such a powerful force. Messing with that could backfire big time. But how did this hands-off approach end up creating an opportunity for nationalists?
Well, Indian leaders realized that these large religious gatherings, where millions of people were coming together, could be used to spread their message of independence under the guise of religious freedom. The British wouldn't interfere, and the message would reach this vast audience.
Wow, talk about turning a challenge into an opportunity.
Yeah.
So they were basically using the Kumbh Mela as a platform for political activism,
Yeah.
right under the noses of the British.
Exactly. And by the late 19th and early 20th centuries, leaders like Bal Gangadhar Tilak and Gopal Krishna Gokhale were using the Kumbh Mela to promote Swadeshi, the boycott of British goods, and the idea of self-rule.
That's brilliant. Imagine being a pilgrim at the Kumbh Mela. You're there for spiritual reasons, and suddenly you're caught up in this wave of nationalist fervor. What an experience that must have been.
It was a clever way to tap into existing networks and instill this sense of unity and national identity.
And then by the 1930s, the Indian National Congress, the leading political party fighting for independence, got even more involved.
Right. That's right. They saw the potential of the Kumbh Mela for political mobilization, and they took full advantage of it.
So I read that at the 1936 Ard Kumbh Mela in Allahabad, they even displayed an idol of Bharat Mata, Mother India. Wait, what exactly is an Ard Kumbh?
Oh, it's basically like a half Kumbh Mela. It's held every 6 years between the main Kumbh Melas that happen every 12 years. So think of it as a smaller but still significant gathering.
Got it. So back to that Bharat Mata idol. Displaying that at the Ard Kumbh must have been a powerful statement.
It was incredibly symbolic. Imagine thousands of pilgrims gathered on the banks of the Ganges. And amidst the religious fervor, you have this powerful symbol of national pride. It must have been quite electrifying.
It wasn't just symbols, though. There were political processions, speeches calling for independence, this fascinating blend of spiritual and nationalist sentiments.
And we can't forget the role of the sadhus, the wandering holy men. They weren't just spiritual figures. They held a lot of respect and influence among the people.
Right, they were seen as leaders and guides. So how did they factor into this movement for independence?
Many sadhus became active participants in the nationalist movement. They used their religious authority to endorse Congress policies and spread the message of freedom amongst their followers.
Wow, that's an incredible example of how religious figures can influence political movements. So we've gone from mythology and ancient rituals to the heart of India's struggle for freedom.
It really shows you how the Kumbh Mela has adapted and evolved over time. It's not just this static religious event. It reflects the social and political currents of its time.
Okay, deep divers,
Right.
we've covered a lot of ground, but hold on to your hats because we're about to wrap things up with some key takeaways and some food for thought in our final part. But first, don't forget to like this episode and subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into fascinating topics. We'll be back with part 3 in a jiffy. Okay, so welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into the Kumbh Mela. We've gone from the mythical churning of the cosmic ocean to the very real struggle for India's independence.
It's really a journey that shows how deeply intertwined religion, culture, and politics can be, especially in a country as vibrant as India.
Absolutely. And for all you UPSC aspirants out there, this deep dive is like a masterclass in understanding the multifaceted nature of Indian history. So let's recap some of those key takeaways before we wrap things up.
We started with that Samudra Manthan myth. You know, the story about the gods and the demons fighting for that elixir of immortality. And that myth explains those 4 Kumbh Mela locations, Haridwar, Prayagraj, Ujjain, and Nashik Trimbakeshwar, each one situated by a sacred river.
And then we dug into the historical debate about the origins of the Kumbh Mela. You know, it's not as simple as like a single origin story. There are all these theories suggesting it evolved over time, maybe influenced by ancient bathing festivals, the Bhakti movement, and the formalization efforts of figures like Adi Shankaracharya.
Right. And of course, we can't forget that fascinating connection to India's independence movement. We saw how nationalist leaders really cleverly used this massive religious gathering to spread their message, mobilize the masses, and contribute to India's fight for freedom.
It's a reminder that the Kumbh Mela isn't just like this static event. It's this living, breathing reflection of India's cultural and historical evolution. It adapts and changes with the times, sometimes in really surprising ways.
And that's what makes it so fascinating to study. It's like a microcosm of Indian society, reflecting its complexities, its spiritual depth, and its unwavering pursuit of freedom.
So as you continue on with your UPSC preparations, remember this: the Kumbh Mela is more than just a festival. It's a symbol of India's enduring spirit and a testament to the power of faith, unity, and the pursuit of a shared dream.
It really makes you think, doesn't it?
Yeah,
How do religious gatherings continue to shape our political and social landscapes today, both in India and around the world? It's definitely something worth pondering.
absolutely. It's been an incredible journey exploring the Kumbh Mela with you all. Don't forget to subscribe and like this episode for more fascinating deep dives. Until next time, keep those brains buzzing.